2015 is upon us. Does anyone remember what we talked about in 2014, last semester?
Love.
We did talk about love. That is one of the things we talked about.
That'd be 1 John.
We talked about 1 John, and we kind of talked under the big title of Knowing God. Is what was our big title. We kind of like left off, didn't really see a lot of that. But we're going to add on to that tagline in 2015. And as you can see up here, we're going to study God's people. So our tagline is going to be Knowing God's People. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 4 Old Testament characters, 4 Old Testament men and women, and we're going to study their story and their life, and we're going to look at their characteristics and see what it was about them that set them apart as faithful followers of God. And so just because I know you're on the edge of your seat, you really want to know who we're going to study. We're going to study Joseph, who we'll start with tonight. We're going to study Moses. We're going to study Ruth, for all the ladies out there. And we're going to study Daniel. Those are the 4 we're going to study. And now, I want to preface just this entire series with just a little refresher about the Old Testament. Because I know the Old Testament doesn't get taught very often. It's really easy for us when we pick up our Bible to read the New Testament, to read something like James or 1 John, because it's short and it's simple. You can apply it to our lives. And the Old Testament is kind of scary because we don't always really understand what's going on. We may have heard a bunch of stories in Sunday school when we were little kids, and we kind of understand the stories, but we don't know how they all fit together. But we believe, and I know for a fact, it's so important to know both the Old and the New. If you want to study the New in its entirety, then you have to study the Old. If you want to understand the Old, then you have to know the New. A phrase, a little catchy phrase that I was taught at the Kanakuk Institute that I really like. You might, if you have paper, you might want to write it down because it's really complicated, and I'm never sure even if I'm going to say it right, so that's why I have it right here. But it's talking about the New and the Old Testament. And what it says is, the New Testament is in the Old Testament concealed, and the Old is in the New revealed. It kind of hits on that relationship, playing back and forth, how the New Testament is really in the Old Testament, but it's kind of concealed in prophecy and foreshadowings and types and all those different things. And the Old Testament is in the New Testament as a revelation. What was foretold in the Old Testament is revealed in the New Testament. And so it's impossible to fully understand one without having a grasp of the other. So that's why we think it's important to study some of these Old Testament stories. And so tonight, we're going to study the story of Joseph. The way we're going to kind of structure this whole series is, for each month, we're going to have a different person. We'll start, and with the first club of each month, we're just going to overview their story, just to give us a reminder of their full story, maybe build upon what you already know, what you've taught in Sunday school, and also to give us a bigger picture of just how it lines up in the Old Testament. Because I know for me, I grew up knowing a lot of those stories, but I never knew like what order they went in. And so hopefully that'll kind of like help you see some more of these things in your mind chronologically as we move along. And so like I said, we're going to start with the story of Joseph. Has anyone ever seen The Prince of Egypt? It's a movie about Joseph, right? Is that entirely true? Like everything in the movie? Probably not. But the great thing is that the story of Joseph in the Bible, which is found in Genesis 37 through 50, is entirely true. That this story isn't just some like old wives' tale, or just isn't some story that someone made up. Like, these are real people, these are real events, these things really happen. They're true, they're history. They're not false, they're history. And so the way this just kind of plays out is, we all know who Adam is, right? Adam was the first man. Adam and Eve ate the apple and sinned. And so we know Adam, and we all know who Noah is, right? Noah was the one who built the ark. His family was saved as the whole earth was destroyed. So Adam, Noah. And then after Noah, we have Abraham come on the scene. Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. God chose Abraham to be the father of his people. So Adam, Noah, Abraham. Abraham had a son named Isaac, who he was going to sacrifice on the altar, but God provided a sacrifice. Abraham's son Isaac has a son named Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, one of which was Joseph. So that's kind of like where we are in the big scheme of things. We're at Joseph. God's people are kind of settled in the land. They're settled in the land of Canaan. Jacob's the father. He has his 12 sons. One of those is Joseph. Now the thing about Joseph is, Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. Jacob had even gone as far as to giving his son Joseph a coat, a fancy coat that set him apart. Yeah, I see you. He had gave him this fancy coat, this fancy jacket to prove that, hey man, you're my favorite son. Is anyone out there the favorite son or daughter of their parents? It's okay. Your brother and sister are probably not here. Right? Am I right? And so what was the natural reaction of Joseph's brothers? They were jealous of Joseph because Jacob's favorite was Joseph. And so they hated Joseph. They didn't like Joseph. Joseph kind of had an entitlement problem. He kind of thought he's a little bit better off than he was because like, oh yeah, Dad gave me this. You know, I don't really have to work in the fields like y'all do. I'm the favorite. And so to make it even worse, Joseph was a dreamer. Joseph was a dreamer, and not in the sense like he just like had great visions on where he was going to go and what he was going to do, but like he literally and physically had dreams, and he would tell them to his brothers. And he had two dreams in particular that really set his brothers off. The first one, he said, brothers, gather around. I had a dream last night. And so they all get around, and he says, hey, we were all working in the fields. We were bundling up our wheat and all your sheaves, the things that you bundle up wheat in. It's called a sheaf. He said, all of your sheaves were bowing down to my sheaf. And they're like, so you're trying to say that we're bowing down to you? Like, you already know we don't like you, and now you're just trying to make us not like you even more? And so, that was his first dream. And his second dream, you know, he's having this dream, he's sleeping, and like all these planets and stars and solar systems and galaxies are all bowing down to Joseph, and he's like, whoa. He's like, guys, listen to this dream. Listen, I had another one. It wasn't just the sheaves. Like, y'all were there, and all the planets and everything was bowing down. And he told it to his whole family, and so even his dad, Jacob's like, son, you're crazy. Why would I bow down to you? Like, I am the father. It doesn't make any sense. And so Joseph was having these dreams and making himself think that he was some high something, and his brothers were just growing super hateful of him. And so it just kept getting worse. The hate just kept building. The jealousy kept building. Until one day, Joseph's brothers were out working in a distant town, and Joseph's dad said, son, go get your hands dirty. Go find your brothers. Go get them. Go hang out with them. Just be with them. So Joseph sets out. And as he's walking up to the city, his brothers spy him from afar. And they think, this is our moment. This is when we get Joseph. This is when we finally get rid of him once and for all. Let's kill him. Let's kill him. Let's do it. Luckily for Joseph, his brother Reuben said, hey, let's not kill him. That's a little drastic. I mean, he is our brother. Let's just throw him in a pit. So, I know, right? So much better. And so Joseph comes up, they take him, they probably beat him up, they dig this hole, and they throw him in a pit. And Joseph's chilling in the pit. He's like, what did I even do, man? He has no idea what's going on. And so they're thinking, okay, but now he's in the pit. Now we can kill him, right? No. These traders start coming by. This caravan comes by. And the brother Judah has the bright idea. I guess he was a businessman. He's like, guys, we're not going to kill him. We're going to sell him. So not only is he out of our life, but we get rich off of it. And so that's what they end up doing. They sell Joseph into slavery with this caravan of traders. And this caravan of traders takes him all the way to Egypt, which is far away from Canaan where they were. And so if we look at the story of Joseph, we look at the timeline, we see Joseph right here. He's his father's favorite son. He's at this high spot. And then he finds himself in this low spot, being sold into slavery. He goes from the high spot to the low spot. But as fate would have it, Joseph gets sold into this man's house by the name of Potiphar. And now Potiphar was the captain of the royal guard in Egypt. And so the way I would think about it is he was kind of like the head of the Secret Service, and he's just a really powerful guy. Just a really powerful man with a lot of powerful men at his disposal. And so Joseph is sold into his house. Joseph is a slave in Potiphar's house. And as time goes on, Joseph finds favor with Potiphar. The Bible says that the Lord was watching over Joseph, that Joseph was continually marked by the Lord's favor throughout this entire process. And so Potiphar kind of sees this and he says, all right, I see you're successful. I want to make you second in command of my entire household. I want you to take charge of everything. All I want to know about is what's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so Joseph starts out as his dad's favorite, goes down to slavery at the very bottom, and he rises back up to being the second in command of one of the most powerful men in Egypt's house. And so things are going good again for Joseph. The golden boy is getting his way again. But another character enters the story. And she goes by the name of Lady Potiphar. Dum, dum, dum. She's evil, by the way. And the thing about Lady Potiphar is that she had a thing for young Hebrew boys. See, Joseph was 17 at the time. He was the age of a lot of y'all. But Lady Potiphar found him attractive. And so she cooked up this scheme to try to get with Joseph, but Joseph ran away. And when Joseph ran away, he left his garment behind. Because he had nothing to do with it. He did not want anything to do with that because he knew that would be dishonoring his master. But he ran from Lady Potiphar and left his garment behind. And so she cooked up this story and said, Joseph came on to me. Joseph attacked me. Husband, defend me. What are you going to do? And he had no choice. Of course he's going to believe his wife. Even though she told a lie, she took Joseph, one of his most faithful servants, and threw him in jail.